All right, great. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a really exciting topic. We're going to be talking about R&D operations today and the platform that we've developed on AWS. But before we get into that, let's start off with some introductions. So if I can get the clicker working, there we go. So I am Mike Kelly. I'm a director at PwC. My role on the platform is I am the business lead for the R&D operations platform. And what I focus on at PwC is working in the pharma life sciences industry, helping organizations solve challenges in R&D operations. But what you'll see today are a lot of things that are very applicable beyond pharmaceuticals, but general R&D operations product development. So excited to talk to you about it today.
Hi, my name is Anirban Chatterjee. I'm a director in PwC's data and analytics practice. On the platform, I am the solutions architect and have been responsible for building it out. At PwC, I focus on modernizing my... Hear me okay? Okay. At PwC, I focus on a lot of the data modernization exercises that our clients are undertaking. And yeah, I'm very excited to co-partner with Mike and present what the platform has to offer.
Okay, so let's start real quick with a poll. So raise your hand if you're health industries, pharmaceuticals, in that industry. Okay, we have a handful. How many are in product development, research and development? Okay, a handful as well. Okay, so those of you who did not raise your hand for the pharmaceuticals and health industries, stay close, pay close attention to this, because this, we believe, is very applicable across any sort of product development and research and development. But let me give you the context first behind what's happening in the pharmaceutical industry so you can get context why we even came here and why we developed this solution. So in pharmaceutical development, there's a massive amount of pressure externally due to a lot of competition in the market, creating these dramatic timelines for the development of products. They're very expensive. And oftentimes the products fail during the clinical development life cycle. So there's an immense amount of scrutiny on making sure that every product that we're investing in, you can think of every product a pharmaceutical company is investing in is just like an asset in your investment portfolio, for example. We want to make sure that all of those assets are progressing forward as quickly as possible and successfully as possible, while also being accountable to our operations. And when we say operations, we're talking about timelines, resources, and costs. So when we think about R&D operations, on the left side of the screen is what we think about. We think about all of these capabilities, bringing that together to enable effective R&D operations. And what organizations are asking are these types of questions. And individually, each of these questions are fairly rudimentary to ask for. You can do, first one, for example, you would call up your project manager and try to figure out, is your project on time? Maybe if I want to know my projected spend, I call my finance organization. But what our organizations are trying to do, and the best way to do this, is to answer all of these together. So what is the impact of a change in a timeline, both to the timeline and when I'm actually getting a drug to market, as well as what are the spend implications, what are the resource implications? And ultimately what this leads to is being able to answer the question on the bottom, which is how do I effectively put together the best portfolios possible, both from an efficacy and a success with a patient, but also with the operational feasibility of that asset. So let me talk about how the industry has progressed and why we're here today showing you this platform. So about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the industry was focused on the left side. And this is probably applicable not just to pharma, but any major organization that's trying to manage their operations. The focus was, let's develop and configure one point solution to try to solve all of these challenges. One place with my timelines, resources, costs. And what organizations were really finding were a couple things. One is the investment curve was dramatic in order to enable that, both from a time perspective and a cost perspective. The second piece, and I've had clients say this, we were stuck in mediocrity. So as we're evolving to generative AI and advanced analytics and cloud computing, the left side was very limiting in that regard, and the capabilities couldn't keep up with the technology advancements. So that's why we moved towards an ecosystem model where we're leveraging AWS and cloud computing to bring all of these data sources together and leverage advanced analytics, generative AI, et cetera, to really enhance the insights that we can provide in R&D operations. And Anirban, I don't know if you want to speak to some additional benefits.
Yeah, and as we kind of look into the platform, there are three things that we want to look into. One is the pharmaceutical landscape continues to change, especially in this M&A world, where a lot of mergers, acquisitions are happening, and there's a very fast need to bring on new assets, projects, portfolios into an existing stack. So scalability is a very key thing. Second thing is the data management space, especially in R&D, is extremely difficult to manage, and the reason being there are multiple systems of truth. Some of them have data that is a lot more recent than maybe the in-house systems, and the ability to actually be flexible and manage across those systems becomes very critical. And the last thing I'll say is, there are in every organization, every project may be slightly different, or every study may be slightly different, and the need to essentially adapt for those nuanced studies. Let's say if it's an oncology trial versus a diabetes trials, the way they're structured may be different, and that level of flexibility is required. So actually shifting away into this new ecosystem of R&D ops gives us that flexibility, and you're building it out on AWS really helps us use the power of cloud computing and at the same time manage to what an organization needs.
So let's make this real. So we were originally in that point solution world, and that was our business. We focused on these large implementations, and we took a step back and we said, we've done this so many times, can't we package this together into a solution that is as close to plug and play as possible? This is very sophisticated, so it'll never be 100% plug and play, but let's get it as close as possible. So we partnered with AWS to develop what we call the R&D operations platform. The way we built it is we've embedded ontologies, we have a data model that's very flexible, we have forecasting engines embedded that can predict your resources and costs, we have machine learning engines that are embedded as well, generative AI capabilities, trying to push the needle both on the capabilities that we can provide, as well as how do we get organizations these insights as quickly as possible. So this is a simple construct of how this works, where we're collecting foundational data from the organizations. We're then processing all of that data and running all of those mechanisms that I just highlighted. And then we have pre-built analytics, dashboards, LLMs, et cetera, that you can access all of this information. I don't know if there's anything you want to add before we go to the demo.
Yeah, and some features about our pipelines that we've built are, data management, data quality is built in. So as we plug into different environments, there are nuances within the data that need to be handled, and our data quality rules are all built in at the ingestion layer. Our data sets are actually data products, means they have the right level of governance, ownership built around it, and they are ready for use not just for the R&D ops platform, but anything else that has an R&D intersection for insights generation or even AI. And the last thing is we focus on quick implementation. How do we get into an environment quickly? And the work really is to focus on ingestion, because every system may be slightly different, or every client's ecosystem might have a different nuance to it. But once the ingestion is plugged in, everything else is plug and play.
Okay, so let's get to the exciting part, which is the demo. So it's going to move fairly quickly here. We only have 20 minutes. But we're starting with the user-based tailored information that you get on the homepage. And of course, we have a chatbot just like everybody else, but we have a chatbot embedded to make the user experience much more intuitive and can direct you right to the answer. Beyond the chatbot, what we often hear from organizations is, I don't want to go to a portfolio dashboard and a project dashboard and a resource dashboard. I just want to go to one place. So the idea here is that you can click through each of those individual levels to find additional detail. The other piece that I wanted to highlight too is that we've tried to make it very simple. So these business questions sometimes are complex, but we have embedded all of these insights to tell you very simply, red, yellow, green, is this something that you need to investigate further into? We have also embedded resource, financial, and timeline information all together in one space. And it may seem like that's pretty obvious, we should do that, but it's a very challenging thing for organizations to do. So you can see across all of these screens, we're now looking at a resource screen right now to see which roles and which functions within my business have capacity constraints. And I can quickly jump to where am I seeing financial impacts. I can tie that back specifically to the projects and the resources that they're spending their time on. So all of it's very, very integrated. And you can see some examples here of some of the financial views. Again, the same methodology. How do we see very simply with indicators, where do I need to address my portfolio, as well as clicking into more detail as you need. So what we're jumping to now is how do we actually power this? So we talked about data quality, data conformance, data ingestion. We talked about forecasting, parametric forecasting, machine learning forecasting. This is the administrative module, if you will, to show that. So this is an example of our no-code parametric forecasting approach. We can develop resource and financial forecasts for your portfolio. You code this in once, and every time you adjust your portfolio, add new assets, or you develop a new timeline, even 15 years out, it's going to generate predictive insights for you. What we're showing here is some of the data ingestion. We have a manual, and we obviously do this with APIs as well directly, but showing the manual one, you can see it's doing validations, it's conforming the data model to our ontology, and as it does that validation, it'll ensure everything's successful. We have data quality checks and conformance checks already embedded in the platform so that you're addressing it in the source, not at the tail end. And then after we ingest, you can actually monitor all of our glue jobs and our lambdas, and you can see those step functions, how they're actually progressing through our processing pipeline. And we provide validation reports at the end of it to tell you if there's any issues, not necessarily with the technology piece, but the underlying data. So there's only so much we can do when we're actually looking at an individual data file, but after we process it, we can see across data tables where there are potentially conflicts that we need to address. So what we just showed you is the foundational piece, so that's kind of running the business. Now, when you have all of that enabled, we thought to ourselves, we can do something pretty sophisticated with portfolio management overall. So if I'm a pharmaceutical executive or I'm an executive of a product development company, I would look at this and I would say, what are the assets that I want to prioritize? Where can I open up new room for products to go into my pipeline? Or where should I prioritize more or decelerate certain things? What we see with our clients is that this is typically a multi-week exercise, all hands on deck, to try to compile what the impacts would be. We created a live user experience where it clicked through very quickly, but it was adding projects, removing projects, changing them around. And it's showing you immediately what the resource financial impact is compared to your live portfolio that you have. The other use case that we typically see is we want to compare multiple options so we can present that to the board or the executive committee and understand how we should change our portfolio. This all does that in real time. So I just made 3 scenarios. I can see my cost impact. I can see my potential revenue projections, my revenue impact from the portfolio that I'm delivering. I can see which functions, which business units are potentially going to be constrained if I apply that portfolio. All of that coming together with our scenario modeling engine. So I know we did that very, very quickly. I'm going to let Anirban talk through the technical details behind that, but we'll open it up for Q&A at the end so we can dive into more.
Yeah, and as we've kind of built this platform out, there are 4 key components that we wanted to just highlight and let people know. First one is that there's a data layer which focuses on bringing the data in as well as modeling the data in a way that it is consumable, not just for fit for purpose users, but also across other use cases or AI use cases. The second is the services layers, actually the way we interact with the data that is already built in. The third is the presentation layer, which is what we really do a lot of deep dive into, and that's how a user would engage with the platform. And the last is what the overall operations to make sure that this is not just a one-time solution, but sustains over time. And how do we monitor it and make sure that any issues that are faced are being handled as well. In this page, we wanted to call out what components we're using through this entire thing. So again, from a data layer, we're using AWS S3 to bring the data in and land it in there. And then, like Mike showed, there are a lot of data quality rules that are processed every time the data is ingested. That's why we're using Lambda in order to run these quality rules. And that's the flexibility aspect that comes in, where these Lambda functions are reusable, and if there are new quality rules that need to be addressed, then they're just new Lambda functions that get added to the entire stack already. We're using a combination of step functions and AWS Glue to process this information. If the processing happens in a sequential way or in a parallel processing, that all is configured through step functions. And finally, we model the entire data up in Redshift, and we chose Redshift as our platform, but you could also go ahead and use other databases, if it's Snowflake or if it's something else, that's totally plug and play as well. From a data services layer, we're primarily using a combination of Lambda plus API gateway. So all APIs are being built in that power the front end on API gateway, and there are Lambda functions that are built in to actually connect into the API gateways. And what you see right at the end is essentially our GenAI connectors, right? So we have a combination of Lambda as well as Elastic containers that connect into both GPT 4.0 as well as Bedrock in order to generate a lot of the Q&A work. So one can actually go into the platform and click on a few suggested questions. And what that does is it directs the user into exactly where they should be focusing on, and that's all generated through our GenAI pieces. Last, I'll touch on the operations side. So it's, again, a fully managed environment where we are using a combination of CloudTrail and CloudWatch to manage what the activity on the platform looks like. There is SNS and SQS, which is used to actually alert both the users who are using the platform and any changes that happen from a project standpoint or a portfolio standpoint, as well as the operations in case of any failures. And then there is a variety of SDKs that we use to make sure that we have a full view and audit into all the components that are being built up. So again, a very quick overview of our platform and the components and services that we've used.
So let's round this out by just saying, how do we actually bring this to organizations? So there's a couple ways that we take it to organizations. The first one is for organizations that aren't looking to take on the IT infrastructure, right? So we have tenants of this AWS solution hosted by PwC, so we'll actually create an instance for you and provision it exclusively for you, but we take care of all of the IT infrastructure associated with it. The second pathway is focused on enabling it on your AWS stack. With this one, we're taking all of the code snippets, all of the step functions, everything. We're packaging all of that together, tailoring that to your specific cloud environment, and then plugging that in and getting that ready to go. The final one, sometimes organizations see this and they go, this is a great idea, this is something that we should build on, but it's not exactly what we need. So we're also developing very bespoke solutions and leveraging what we've created as an accelerator to get you there a lot faster. And with that, we're delivering outcomes on a quarterly basis, but the timeline is dependent on what the organizational needs are.
And our platform contains a lot of modular components that actually can be used in different solutions as well, and that's where the bespoke solutions comes in. If you're into product development, or if you have a portfolio with costs and resources, or any aspects of that, this actually does work, and this is a lot of the components that we have within the platform can be lifted and shifted and repurposed for the thing. And then in closing, again, my name is Anirban Chatterjee. I thank you for your time and looking at our platform.
Yeah, and Mike Kelly, thank you so much for attending today. I know it's a crazy week and a lot going on, but thanks for prioritizing us. You can see on the QR code here on the right, take a scan of that. That is our website. You will find more information about the platform. We actually host a couple of events focused on R&D operations, so that's where you can request to sign up for that. and you can request to reach out to us to learn more about the platform and our offering. But thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. And I don't know if we actually have time for Q&A.